In the world.
Well, thank you very much. So thank you all for having me. I'm glad to be here. I'm going to go through a few different things today. I'm going to talk primarily about my career journey. I thought that might be useful for some of you because when I was sitting where you're sitting right now, well, I wasn't because this building didn't exist, so I was sitting across the way. But when I was doing that, had a very good thing in mind about what I was going to do. I had no idea how to get there. And then I had a different idea about what to do later on, and I had no idea how to get there. So I want to give you an idea of sort of where I've gotten to, how I've gotten where I've gotten, and give you hopefully some advice that might be useful along the way. Ask questions as we go. I'm also going to talk a little bit about Blue Origin, the company, what we do, what our vision is, and what we're trying to do in the industry. And then I'll talk about the career stuff. At the end, if we have time, I have fun rocket videos because rockets are kind of what I do and I've done at various points in my career, including now, and rockets are fun. And watching them blow up when they're not yours is also very fun, at least for me. So I've got some videos there we can talk about and show. So let me dive in and talk a little bit about Blue Origin. And so who is Blue Origin? Blue Origin is an aerospace company, a space company primarily, founded by Jeff Bezos. He created that in the year 2000, so we're 20 years old now. And the reason Jeff started the company and decided to invest his own money in what is essentially a rocket company, which is kind of a little bit different from Amazon if you think about it, what he thought of is he had a vision of millions of people living and working in space. Okay, he's looking 3, 4, 5 decades out from where we are now and into the beyond, okay? And what he thought about was we need to go to space in order basically to save the Earth, okay? We need to establish a robust space economy. One benefit of that is economic advancement, but one of the things he really thinks about is how do we get industry off of Earth, okay? How do we go into space, basically into cislunar orbit, so the space between Earth and the moon, and how do we put people and industry and applications in space such that the entire Earth economy and the entire Earth itself is better? Okay, that's basically the reason behind what we do. So the question is, well, Ethan, if you're talking about 20 years ago, we don't really have a lot of people working in space, so how are we supposed to get here? So Jeff founded the company to analyze exactly how to make that happen, okay? And he hired a team of really smart people to come up with different concepts of space transportation, how to get stuff to space in an efficient manner, okay? If you're the US government or NASA or a commercial company, and you want to place a satellite into Earth orbit, satellites do Earth observation, satellites do communication, satellites do scientific experiments. If you want to place that into orbit, you have to build the satellite, okay, which is a $200 to $300 million proposition. And then you have to launch the satellite, which is a $50 to $100 million proposition, okay? It's not cheap, all right? It requires a lot of resources to go and do that. So one of the ways you help foster that economy is reduce the cost of access to space. Make it easier and cheaper to get people and stuff, to use a technical term, into space. So what they decided to work, they looked at all sorts of different concepts on how to do that. We have people looking at anti-gravity stuff, okay? But in order to make it practical and to make it affordable and to make it something they could realize, what they came to was the best way to do it was to use somewhat traditional rocket engine and rocket architecture concepts and make it reusable, okay? The thing about expendable rockets today, so there was a launch of the Solar Dynamic Observatory over the weekend for NASA, okay? And they launched on what's called an Atlas V rocket. And that rocket flies, drops its booster stage, goes to orbit. The second stage is expended in orbit, okay? That rocket cost $200 million. He spent $200 million and threw it away. So liken that to going to the airport, building an airplane, getting on the airplane, flying across the country to Los Angeles, and throwing the airplane away. Doesn't seem very efficient, okay? The way you break that out is you use reusable space transportation and you reuse as much of that architecture as possible. So The ethos of our company is a Latin phrase called gradatim ferociter. Okay, it means step by step ferociously. Blue is a company that is focused on doing things the right way and not worrying about being too flashy, not worrying about getting there faster than somebody else and failing. We're really focused on doing things right and really marching forward to getting to our long-term goal. Where we have gotten in the last 20 years is if you look on, let's see if I have this on the next chart. If you look on the left side of the slide here, that's our New Shepard vehicle. Now, you look at it, it's like, well, Ethan, it's a rocket, and it's got a blunt end on one end, and it's got what look like legs coming out the bottom. Is that what a rocket is supposed to look like? So these are, in fact, landing legs. The blunt part of the top means that it has dispensed its capsule, which we have designed to carry people to suborbital missions. So you go up across the boundary of space, you carry 6 people in a capsule, and it comes back down. We have not launched people yet. We are working to do that this year, but we have launched that capsule about a dozen times. But what you see is the rocket landed back near where it took off from. Okay? So that will be reused. That will be used again. We don't have to build another one. Okay? That's what it's all about. On the right side is where we're working toward to go to orbit. So to get to low Earth orbit, to get to other orbits around the Earth, that's called New Glenn, named in honor of John Glenn. New Shepard, named in honor of Alan Shepard. And New Glenn uses the same concept. Okay? Now what's really cool is New Glenn, basically New Shepard can fit on the top of New Glenn. So much more power you've got going to orbit as opposed to going on a suborbital mission. And if anybody wants to talk more about space and space flight, I could really go on all day, but trust me, nobody wants to hear me drone on all day. But this is where we're headed and what we do, and we're marching forward in a very diligent way to do it. As I said, Blue was founded 20 years ago. We're now up to 2,500 people. I joined the company at the beginning of 2017, so I've been there 3 years now. In those 3 years, my first week at the company is where we crossed the 1,000 employee threshold. So it took 17 years to grow from 0 to 1,000 employees, and then the last 3 years we've added 1,500 people. That's the amount of engineering work and infrastructure work you need to put in to actually realize what we're doing as an aerospace company. Our headquarters is in Kent, Washington. That's right outside of Seattle. When the company started as a research and development company, it was in downtown Seattle. They moved it out to the Seattle suburbs, an industrial area, because what they did is they found an old Boeing factory, and they were looking for a place where they could actually do testing, because you build a rocket engine, you kind of have to test it. Usually you do this stuff far away from people, okay? However, they found a Boeing facility where they used to build engines, jet engines. And they did testing there. And the zoning said you could do testing on engines. And our people said, rather astutely, said, well, does that mean we can test rocket engines? And the people in Kent went, sure, why not? And so we have a test facility outside the back of this place. It is a really cool place to work. It's a really cool place to just be around because Jeff Bezos has a collection of science and science fiction artifacts, which he has then installed in the headquarters. So there's really cool stuff like stuff from TV shows and stuff from movies and stuff over the years that has actually flown in space. I work in Washington, D.C. I live outside of the Washington, D.C. Proper. We're in Arlington, Virginia. That's basically a small office that does government relations and it does sales and marketing, of which the team of which I am a part. Van Horn, Texas is where we launched the New Shepard vehicle, and we do the majority of our big rocket engine testing. We have several test stands there. We're building our engine manufacturing facility in Huntsville, Alabama. We're building a launch site at Cape Canaveral, Florida. We will have a second launch site at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. So I mentioned the size difference between New Shepard and New Glenn. This is actually representational. So the barely visible dot on the screen is a human being. That's a real size person. New Shepard is this, and on top where it says 7-meter fairing, fairing is what's commonly called the nose cone of the launch vehicle. It's what protects whatever payload is in there while you're launching through the atmosphere. You can fit New Shepard inside of that. And while we are not going to do that, because we have no reason to do it, we have a lunar system, a Lunar Lander system that we announced last year that is being derived from some of the landing and engine technologies that we worked on New Shepard. So part of being a rocket company is being a propulsion company. There are other companies out there that build rocket engines. We decided that it would be good to do that in-house and do it the way we wanted to do it. And we built that up over time. So BE1 and BE2, Blue Engine 1, Blue Engine 2, were terribly creative with names. That was something that gave us the knowledge on how to get where we are now. We then moved into BE3, which is what powers the New Shepard vehicle. Okay, and I'll just do real quick on rocket engines. You take a fuel, okay, in this case, hydrogen, okay? You can use a hydrocarbon, you can use kerosene. That's what a lot of rockets use. So you need some fuel to burn, you need oxygen to burn it, okay? It's called an oxidizer, all right? So you take the fuel and the oxidizer and you put them together and fire comes out the back end. Rocketry 101. So BE3 is what powers the New Shepard, and the great thing we've designed into our engines all the way through BE4, which is the main engine for New Glenn, is that they have what's called a really good throttling range, okay? What happens is you shoot off a rocket engine, it's producing tons of thrust, okay? You kind of have to do that to get to orbit. It's kind of important. But when you're trying to land, well, you don't want 100% of power coming out because you're just going to go somewhere else, all right? So what you're doing is you throttle the engine down to a lower level. That allows you to do a nice soft landing. And that's part of one of the key parts of our usability in our architecture. And I mentioned our Lunar Lander. So we announced this last year. There's a NASA competition for landing people on the moon. You may have heard NASA is looking to a new lunar architecture and how to do that. So they are looking for landing, bring a lunar lander to the moon. We're actually going to do this with NASA or without NASA. We see this as a way to get payloads to the moon, to get experiments to the moon, to get supplies for future habitats to the moon. For if astronauts are on the moon, somebody's got to take them stuff. You need oxygen, you need water, you need food. If you're building things or doing experiments, you kind of need those things too. So this is an evolution of the architectures that we have. So it's powered by an engine that's called BE7 that's derived from the rest of the engine architecture that we've done. Some of the landing technologies and the avionics that go into that are based on work we've done on New Shepard. So this is what you do as an aerospace company. You build these kind of concepts and you use the different things that you have to actually create new concepts on top of that. Any questions about Blue? Y'all seem riveted. All right. So let me switch gears. So I want to talk about my career and how I got there, not because I want to talk about me. I mean, my wife doesn't want me to drone on for 45 minutes about me. But I thought my journey might be useful to you. As I'm thinking about where you are, I started out at Elizabethtown, okay? I graduated in 1994. Anybody want to guess what degree I graduated with? Political science. What were you going to say?
I was going to say com.
Close. Yeah, that would have been a good guess, okay? I graduated degree in political science. Now, this is why I thought this might be interesting, because you're like, Ethan, you're selling rockets and you got a political science degree. Like, how exactly does that work? So let me take you through that. So, graduated in 1994 from Elizabethtown. From there, I got to the end of Elizabethtown. I thought what I was going to do was I was going to work in a legislative office. I thought I was going to work for an agency of some sort, and I was going to create policy, okay? I thought making policy that got stuff done was a pretty cool thing to do. There are careers that do that, and I thought that would be a pretty neat thing. When I got to the end of my 4 years here at E-Town, I said, well, I don't really feel like I'm ready to go work, and I don't really feel like just having a bachelor's degree is going to get me as far as I want to go. So I said, all right, I'll go get a master's degree. I went to the University of Rochester. I got a degree in public policy analysis, which, okay, wait, I was doing what I said I was going to do. Okay, cool. And as I went through that program, I realized something, okay? I didn't take at E-Town, I took like one math class, all right? Political science major, huge surprise, I know. Contain your surprise. But what I realized when I was at Rochester, I was going through a very analytics-heavy program, okay? This was a lot of number crunching, okay? My first year at Rochester, I'm taking engineering level calculus. Like, now it helps that I also happen to be good at math, but I'm like, wait a minute, I went from doing no math to a lot of math. What I realized was I'm a really good analyst, okay? Something I do very well. I can create models, I can create forecasting of financial forecasts, I can create forecasts of how markets develop, and I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. Like, I like doing this. It has applications in the public policy world. As I'm sure you know, it also has plenty of applications in the business world. So, my second semester of my master's program, I was getting ready to graduate, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to go work for the government. So, anybody change majors here while you're here? All right, kind of stressful, yes, like, whoa, what am I doing? Well, I had the same epiphany my second year before I was about to get my master's degree. I'm like, well, this might introduce some uncertainty, don't you think? So the way I moved, so what I decided was, look, I want to try to work in the business world. I don't know what I want to do or where I want to do it, but I know the kind of thing I like to do. So I actually turned down a job in Rochester, New York, because primarily I didn't want to live in Rochester, New York, okay? Rochester, New York is a great city. I had a fun 2 years there. Rochester, New York is always like it is outside right now. Except for between May and August, the rest of the year is just like this, okay? I can't live like that. So I decided, well, you gave me a nice job offer, but I don't really want to do that. So I went home with no job, okay? Also distressing to your parents, perhaps, yes. So a few months later, I got a call. There's a message from me. Some guy from Rochester who had been in the program I was in about 5 years ahead of me was working at a consulting firm down in Bethesda, Maryland, and said, hey, we are staffing up for a big project, and we asked the program if they knew good people, and they gave me your name. Okay? And I said, yes, absolutely. That's one of the two things I want you to take away from all this, okay? That's thing number one, is you will get recognized for what you do, okay? And it may not be directly the schoolwork you're doing now, okay? It may be project work you do elsewhere, but all throughout your career, that is going to happen. You are recognized for the quality of the work that you do, okay? And it matters. It matters a lot. But, as I will point out, it is most certainly not the only thing. So, I get a call. Let's see if this is working. Okay, so I get a call. I go work for a place called Futron Corporation. You can look it up. Futron no longer exists. It was bought by a bigger firm called Avocent probably about 10 years ago. Avocent does still exist. They do a lot of work in the space business. They do a lot of work in consulting, and they do a lot of work in like M&A transactions. So they do a lot of business analysis. So when I went to Futron, I spent 3.5 years there, and it was fantastic. So I show up on the first day. Remember, they said they're staffing up for a big project. So I show up on the first day, and they said, Ethan, and I was with like 3 other new people. They said, Ethan, we have been tasked by Lockheed Martin Corporation under $1 million contract to go create a 10-year forecast of demand in the satellite communications industry. Okay? And I'm like, wow, I know nothing about satellite communications. This is going to be fun. So what we had to do was create a forecast, like using analytical tools, and then basically create a package for Lockheed Martin for doing this. It was a very intense 4 months of my life. So I'm sitting there in the conference room the first day, Ethan, you're responsible for the direct-to-home and the satellite radio market. I'm like, what does that mean? Okay, so coming up the curve quick in a new role is kind of an important thing. But it gave me my introduction to the satellite industry and the commercial space industry where I'm working right now. I've done other things in my career, as I'll show, but that was my entry. And what I did there was hone my analytical chops. Okay, I told you I thought I was good at forecasting and crunching, number crunching and analysis. I got really good really quick in a role like this. And there are plenty of roles that you can roll into in consulting, in program, different companies where you're fresh in, where you can get wrapped into things like this. So, the other important thing I want you to take away from what I'm telling you and what I'm going to talk about probably for the rest of this chart, is relationships matter. Okay? Quality of your work matters and relationships matter. And you're going to see this very clearly as I go through this. So at Futron, these are some of the people I met. Okay, Cosmo was his name, a cool name. So Cos was the guy who called me and left a message. He was the director of the division in that company that was actually doing this project. And he's the one who pulled me in there. So also while I was there, some other key people were in my life. So Carissa was basically the project leader, okay? Mark was the, another key player on the team. Clay was a future client that we got in my 3 years there. Clay was the director of the Satellite Industry Association. So he hired us to do some of the forecasting work that he wanted to show his membership, okay? Because it was all about commercial space. And then Jim was one of our customers at Lockheed Martin Corporation, okay? So he was big into the space sector at Lockheed Martin. He was a vice president there. And so the point is, all of these people got to know me and my work. And what happens with that is it leads to future opportunities, okay? One of the key things I want you to take away from this when I say relationships matter is I've been working since 1996, okay? I like to think I have a fairly successful career. I like what I do. I make a good buck. I'm pretty happy. But I have never in my life looked up a company, looked for job opportunities online, put in an application and a resume, and gotten a job. Now, I have done that. I've done the first two steps. You know, I've looked up job opportunities, I put in a resume, and I've never, ever, ever gotten a job out of that, okay? All of my jobs that I have gotten, and each time I have moved, I have sort of moved up the food chain, all of those have been because of relationships. And that's why when I say relationships matter, it's all about quality and not, or it's all about quality, not quantity. Okay? You're going to meet plenty of people in your professional lives, and it's going to be an ongoing thing. But the quality and depth of those relationships matter, and what these people think of you matter a lot. So, by 2000, I was trying to think of what else I was going to do, and Jim calls me. Okay, Jim, my Lockheed Martin customer. He said, Ethan, you did great work for us on this. I have a role as an analyst role opening at International Launch Services. So Lockheed Martin at the time was the part owner of a joint venture with a company in Russia called Khrushchev. And what they did is they jointly marketed the launch vehicles that Lockheed Martin produced and the launch vehicles that Khrushchev produced. Okay? So basically, we sold Russian rockets. Think about it, it's kind of strange, but it worked really well, and it's important. It was an important piece of the satellite industry at the time. So Jim calls me up, offers me a job there. I took that and I moved. So as we progressed through there, I met more people in my professional life there. Now, the other thing I'm doing over this time is I'm increasing my skill set. Okay, this is where I took my analytical skills and move them into sales and marketing. Okay, because here, Ethan, you're in the back office, you're doing forecasts, you're doing our competitive analysis, you're looking at our competitors and figuring out what they're going to do. But taking that and applying it to how we go to market with our offerings and how we do sales, what do we create for our customers? Okay, that was what I really started to do. Again, I'm happy to talk more in detail about any of these roles or what I do. You can look up my whole career history and the different things I've done on LinkedIn. You can also get a really nice picture of me and my forehead. I'm thinking about my forehead, its own LinkedIn page at some point because it's prominent enough. Guys, it's coming, like 20 years. I'm sorry, it is. So, but what I learned there, I started applying in different ways. I started getting exposed to new roles and new opportunities, okay, and applying this to sales and marketing. So, obviously, I met other people there, okay? Good friend of mine by the name of Kim, okay? What Kim worked on was a function called price to win. So Kim would do analysis of all our competition and say, this is what the competition's going to do. Here's what we have to do, and here's what we have to price to win the deal, okay? Now, Kim's very good at it from the defense side of things. Okay, so in the world of defense business development and sales, that's a really big deal because you're trying to win big billion-dollar programs. And Kim and his partner basically, they won some of the biggest programs that the Department of Defense puts out. Okay, they won the Joint Strike Fighter program. It's like $35 billion. Okay, it's huge. So Kim and I got to be really good friends. And Kim and I also connected at an analytical level. Okay, we like to think about analysis and marketing the same way. Okay, well, Kim becomes really important because in 2006, it became pretty clear that Lockheed Martin was going to divest itself of international launch services. Okay, it's another key thing to think about here. So you'll go to a company, and you'll go and you'll work, and you'll be like, "It's a cool place. I like it. This is awesome." That company can be bought or sold. Okay, I mean, it can buy other companies. You can integrate with other companies. That company is going to change under your feet. All right, and as great as whatever it is and what you're doing, that company is going to change. So I'm working for International Launch Services, good people, cool place to work. We're doing big deals. It's a lot of fun. And like Lockheed Martin's like, yeah, I'm going to stop doing this. What they did is they ended up selling it back to the Russians. And I'm like, as much as I like selling the Russian stuff, I don't know that I want to work for that outfit. Okay, because I'd had a good look at it from the inside. I said, I'm not sure that's where I want to go. So Kim had left the company a few years before me, and I called him up. I said, Kim, I need help. You know, I'm looking for an opportunity. I'm looking for a role. Okay, he gets me connected to people he knows at General Dynamics. Okay, now I took a role at General Dynamics doing something what I thought was really, really cool. Okay, I was analyzing merger and acquisition opportunities. So the unit of General Dynamics I worked for was looking to go buy companies. Okay, buying companies is fun, exciting stuff. Okay, you're doing a big deal. You get a lot of visibility. You get to look at, you talk with the executive team. It's really fun. Okay, so they were looking to, they need a guy, a good analyst, somebody with good skills to say, how does this work strategically? Is this a good strategic deal? Okay, go find opportunities that would be good strategic partners and good strategic matches for General Dynamics. It was great. It was cool. I lasted a year. Okay, why did I last a year? Because General Dynamics, unbeknownst to me when I joined, was in the midst of a major reorganization. Okay, they took that business unit, they combined it with another business unit, they reduced the number of operating lines within the business unit. I had 3 bosses in a period of 9 months. Okay, it's tough. All right, this stuff happens. All right, and it's nobody's fault. Nobody's trying to make it bad for you, but that's what happens. So I called Kim again. I said, Kim, you got me into a real nice situation here. How about helping me out again? All right. By the way, just I mentioned these people. I'm friends with these people to this day. Okay. These are strong professional relationships that have turned into friendships. All right. And that's how I view these people, and that's the kind of relationship we have. So I called Kim. I said, help me out again. He says, okay, I got another guy for you. He's looking to set up a competitive analysis price to win team at the business unit he's working for. So I go talk to them. That was a company called ITT, which later, in the interest of merger and acquisition, so ITT spun out its defense business into something called Excelis, and then Excelis split its business into something called Excelis and Vectrus, and then Excelis got bought by L3 Harris, and now it doesn't exist anymore. And that's in a space of 10 years. Okay. So, but I went to Excelis, and I had a great experience there, both in terms of good things and really tough things. All right. I set up a competitive analysis price to win group. I ran it. I had 4 people working for me. I was a mid-level manager at the time. I was having lots of fun, and they restructured and basically took that away from me. They changed how they wanted that managed. Okay. Now that was bad. However, it opened new opportunities for me because what I became within that was what's called a capture manager. Okay, if you work in defense, so there's aerospace and defense are usually one and the same thing. There's not a lot of purely commercial aerospace companies. They have a mix of government and commercial business, and the way you think about government and commercial business are very different. Okay, so you're trying to go get government business. It's a very structured process for how you go win work from the U.S. government and how you maintain that work. There's lots of regulations. There's a lot of very specific rules on what you can and can't do. Okay, and the capture manager is the person charged with, hey, Ethan, see that $100 million opportunity over there? Go create a strategy to win that. Go create the strategy, go put a team together, go win that work. So that's what I did. I moved into that kind of role. It's great for learning how to manage people. It's great for learning how to lead a team of people that don't necessarily directly report to you through a project. And it's great for learning how to do marketing. By marketing, I mean strategy. When you talk about marketing, there's a lot of aspects to it. There's strategy, pricing, brand, communications. I focus on the pricing and strategy side. And that's what I've learned that I'm really good at and what I really like to do. And it's taken me 20 years to figure that out, but I figured that out. So what you learn as a capture manager is how to position your solution to win the work. And a lot of that is how you communicate that to the government, what kind of strategy you come up with to position differentiators that your company can do that somebody else can't. It's on structuring a financial deal for the government that is really good, yet still meets your internal targets. Okay? It's a great education in marketing. So Tim was my boss for a while at ITT Excel. I still talk to Tim. And he basically was the one who had faith in me and put me in a capture manager role. Because I did really good work for Tim, and Tim really liked me. All right? And he said, Ethan, I'm going to put you in capture manager roles. Now, Tim may have liked me a little too much because at one point I was running capture on the 3 biggest recompetes we had for our company. I'm like, Tim, you've got me responsible at the same time for $3 billion opportunities. It's probably not going to work out well for the company. Okay, I like it. It's probably not going to work out that well. You need to get some more help in here. But Tim is someone who has been a counsel to me when I've taken other roles. Tim is someone, I'll show you where he is. Tim is someone who has a role that can basically lead to future opportunities as well. So I spent 6 years at Axcelis. Now, the fun thing about Axcelis was this was one of the opportunities where I was living in Washington, D.C. They paid me to move to Colorado. Okay? And then when I was done, I went to work for Honeywell Aerospace back in the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area, and they paid to move me back. So another part of this is you can think about your career geographically in a lot of different ways. Where do you want to end up? Where would you like to be? What would you like to experience? We lived in Colorado for 6.5 years, and I thought, Colorado's beautiful. It's wonderful. We bought a house that had a view right of Pikes Peak in the back. I'm like, this is really awesome to wake up to every day. Okay? After 6 years, I'm like, I miss the East Coast a lot. Okay? What I determined was I'm an East Coast guy, and I need to live on the East Coast. So Honeywell Aerospace had a position open in marketing that really aligned to the way I thought. Well, look who I know at Honeywell Aerospace. Jim. Okay? Well, I knew Jim all the way back here. Okay? And like I said, Jim and I kept up a relationship all that time. And Jim says, hey, Ethan, I got this role with our government services unit back in Columbia, Maryland. Are you interested? And the job was being the marketing strategy guy, being the guy who's determined how to grow that business unit, how to create strategies in order to enter different market spaces, what market spaces we, the company, should enter. Okay? So it was a lot of fun for somebody like me who likes to do those kinds of things. And so Jim set me up with the business unit lead. She liked me, I got the job, it was really cool. And I had a good time working there. Now, another thing to think about as you get through your career and you go through different companies, not only is geography, but also culture. Okay? Some companies are fun places to work. All right? Some companies are less fun to work at. It's just the way it goes. Some cultures you personally will mesh with well. Some cultures you will not. All right? And you've got to recognize those things and realize what the trade-offs are. So Honeywell Aerospace is a fantastic place for opportunity. Okay? Honeywell Aerospace had a marketing organization where the marketing people, the marketing strategy people, the product marketing managers ran product lines. They were essentially the business unit directors for whatever product line they ran. Okay, that's a big responsibility, and it's a good way to manage what you're doing. If you, in your career, decide you want to lead business units, it was a fantastic hotbed of opportunity because there were tons of things to do within Honeywell. There were tons of new product lines being set up all the time. There were always opportunities to move and do different things. Honeywell Aerospace was a $10 billion enterprise. It had over 40,000 people in terms of employees, and there are always opportunities popping up all over the country. Okay? Now, the only problem is the culture at Honeywell Aerospace was pretty toxic. Okay? It was very political. It was very internally focused. It was a lot of, who you knew as opposed to how good you were. And it was a very strange organization that was very focused on the next quarter's earnings and how to make that happen. All they cared about was delivering the numbers back to the home office in New Jersey. It's all they truly cared about. They made a big deal of talking about customers and how much they like customer needs. And if you look at some of what they do from the outside, your customer's like, yeah, I can't stand working with them. Honeywell Aerospace is just, I don't like being their customer. Okay? So you learn these things only through experience. But as you're presented with different opportunities and you look at different ways you can move your career, these are things to think about. Okay? And if you get into an interview in the next few years, probably for whatever job you're going to be working in as your first thing out of either college or graduate school, ask about culture and ask the people who are interviewing you about that. Okay? Because it's really important. You got to figure out if you're a fit with what goes on at that company or not. So Honeywell Aerospace, I don't want to surprise anyone, but the business unit I was working for got sold. Okay? Honeywell decided they were going to divest themselves of the government service business in which I was working and the business unit that was headquartered in Columbia, Maryland, where I was working. Now what's funny is no one tells you these things. You just sort of happen to learn them as you're experiencing them. So I determined about 9 months before I left, I said, okay, because I was in this business unit, my position was on the leadership team, so I had visibility to what was going on. But there were only a certain number of people who were in the know that the company was going to be divested. Okay? And so I figured it out on my own because I had enough experience to know that. So I said, well, maybe I'll stay here, but it's kind of time for a new job. And I started looking. This was a summer of unsuccessful resume submissions. Okay, even that late in my career, I was still, I put in for some things on LinkedIn that sounded interesting, and I found a few companies. I had one memorably horrible interview, which I will relate later on if anybody wants to hear about it at the end or at lunch. But what happened was I called, let's see, I'll talk about the people I met there. But I called my friend Clay. Remember Clay from back here? Yeah, he and I have been in touch for 20 years at this point. I called my friend Clay. I said, Clay, I've taken a new role within Honeywell Aerospace because Jim got me another role as the company was being divested. I said, hey, I just want you to know, the last time we met, I was working this job. Next time we meet, I'm working this other job. Just something different I'm doing. Clay says to me, I'm moving too, but I can't tell you about it right now. I said, well, that sounds entertaining. He says, you heard of Blue Origin? I'm like, yeah, kinda. It's like, yeah, I'm going to work there, but you can't tell anybody. Because he was in the process of leaving his previous employer. And I said, well, that sounds kind of fun. So let's get to lunch, in a couple months. A couple months later, I go to lunch with Clay. He says, Ethan, building a sales and marketing team, I need you. And I said, well, tell me more, because strangely enough, I happen to be looking for a job. And so Clay brought me on board to Blue Origin. Now, Blue Origin, culturally, extraordinarily different from Honeywell Aerospace, as you might guess. Okay, very much the startup mentality, okay, which is, hey, I've got a lot of work to do now. Okay, I've done more, just hours and effort. I've done more work in the last 3 years than I did in the previous 10. Okay, but it's fun. We're building stuff, we're building customers, we're building our offerings, we're building how we're going to go to market, we're deciding what kind of things we can offer customers. Okay, I do something new every day and it's tons of fun. So, strangely enough, as we add people at Blue Origin, you need to add management expertise, okay? So 6 months after I joined Blue, Blue hires its very first chief executive officer, a guy named Bob Smith, who worked at Honeywell Aerospace. Big surprise to me. I didn't expect they'd hire somebody from traditional aerospace to run the company, but it's important for getting Blue Origin from where it was, which was an R&D company, to being an aerospace manufacturing company, which they were trying to get to. So Bob brings along Mike, okay? I happen to know Mike at Honeywell. I happen to have a good relationship with Mike at Honeywell. Mike was at Blue for a year, and now he's my boss's boss. And he's working to help develop my career within the company, okay? A lot of the other people I have met over time, so when I was at Honeywell, Carrie was the lead of that business unit. She's now the president and chief operating officer at Parsons Corporation, which is a government services and infrastructure contractor. I work with Sandeep, who I had lunch with a couple of weeks ago. He's now a business unit vice president at AECOM. I met somebody I consider a very good friend named Brian. He was one of the business unit leads at the Honeywell unit I was working for. He's now the VP of products at a security company called Verint. He and I have lunch about every 3 months and talk basically about business and such. Carissa and Mark, my project leads from way back at Futron, they now own a company that is trying to grow itself more into the commercial space and the federal contracting space. So relationships matter. Relationships shape your career, both internal to the companies that you're in and external to the companies that you might go to. So, defense and aerospace. If you're thinking about defense and aerospace, and the fun thing is, I'm not an engineer. Okay, remember, my degree is in political science. And aerospace and a lot of defense companies are run by engineers. Okay, if you are going to be a business unit lead, if you're going to be a product line manager, if you do anything like that, you are an engineer, and you're a good systems engineer. But you're also an engineer that doesn't really want to do engineering anymore. You want to go run business, okay? So if you're looking in the defense and aerospace space, I hate saying that, but I found no way to avoid that. You can think about different opportunities in different ways. Big company versus small company. I have worked for big companies, as you've seen. I've worked for small companies. I've worked for mid-sized companies too. Each has their different culture. Each is in their different growth mode. Each is trying to decide either where it wants to take its big business or grow its business that it is. Is it established company? Is a startup? Okay, I was at a conference out in Silicon Valley up until yesterday where for all of these small satellite and small space companies. So there's venture capitalists there, there's all these startup companies. There's like, yeah, I got an idea for a spacecraft and I need funding. So there's all sorts of those opportunities right now. There's a lot of money pouring into space right now. Are you looking at a specific technology or are you looking at an industrial conglomerate? That sort of goes with the big company, small company, but what kind of stuff are you interested in? I mean, Honeywell, if you look across its portfolio, it's a conglomerate, okay? And just within aerospace, they make auxiliary power units for airplanes, okay? They make the lighting systems for the interior of the aircraft, okay? They make the gyros that control satellites, okay? They got a broad breadth of different technologies. And hardware versus software versus services, okay? What is that company doing and what do you sort of align to? Is there something in your history that guides you in one of these areas, or can you go do different cool things? Lots of different types of opportunities. Obviously, as I said, engineering, but marketing and strategy, which I've done now for basically 25 years in this space. Between that and sales and business development, that's basically what I've done. Plenty of finance opportunities. It's a huge, important way to run those businesses. A lot of people who end up leading businesses in aerospace, if you're not an engineer, you came out of the finance organization. And other support functions like HR, all the internal IT functions, things like that. All right, are we at time? I've got time? Cool, anybody have any questions? I'm really happy to engage you. Go ahead, please.
So you were talking about how you try to act pop culture, interview. How would you recommend going about that?
That's a great question. You can dive right in with that. So I'm sitting across the table from you, Ethan, tell me about the culture of this company. It's a great place to start because in this day and age, people know what that means. Okay, they'll sort of understand what you're getting at. You can also ask about, sort of take me through, a typical day within the scope of responsibilities in what we're doing here. Or, ask them straight out, like, how do you like working here? What do you like about working here? I mean, and you can gauge a lot by what they say and by what they don't say. I mean, I love coming in here. I'm excited every day. These are great people. This is a lot of fun. Or, well, there's lots of opportunities, and there's, we work on a lot of interesting projects. You can gauge a lot from that. Does that help? Okay, good. Anybody else? Okay, so assuming this works well, so let me show you some fun videos.
Writing's not that easy. But
The ad is not a fun video.
this sentence is grammatically correct, but is wordy and hard to read. It undermines the writer's message and
All right. Okay, so we webcast all of our launches of New Shepard, and New Shepard is really cool to watch launch. It's also extraordinarily cool to watch land, in my opinion. Let's see, we're in terminal count at about 42. We're T-minus a minute.
Shortly here, we're going to see the BE-3 engine gimbal.
We're testing the control fins that are on the back end of the spacecraft. This is basically, what you're seeing here is basically a typical rocket launch countdown, okay? You fuel up, you get ready to go, you get in the terminal count. What happens is you're doing all the testing to make sure it is ready to go.
A lot easier to do during a cold morning like this in January. All right, we're T-minus 30 seconds to go. It is game time, New Shepard. Godspeed.
Now, so what is in our capsule here, the capsule you see here is a prototype of the capsule that we use to carry people across the boundary of space. What's in it right now is a lot of experimental payloads. One of the things people like to do as they're launching space systems, you like to get an understanding of how it functions in a microgravity environment. So in weightlessness, like what's going to happen to this thing when I take it out of gravity? And so we can put those things in the capsule. Sorry, I should have thought of that earlier. That's from a drone, by the way, which we started doing pretty recently. That's kind of fun. So as a suborbital vehicle, New Shepard goes straight up and straight down, basically. Okay? If you're launching into orbit, you're launching like this, because you're trying to get around the Earth. Okay? Suborbital vehicle, cross 100 kilometers, and then straight back down, basically. And I'm going to skip ahead here, as fun as this is. So, engine cuts off, capsule separates from the booster, heads off across the boundary. Now, if you're looking at altitude that is down here, we're going up and up and up and up. Okay? Crossing about 300,000 kilometers is about crossing, or 300,000 feet is basically crossing about 100 kilometers, which is where you want to be. So you can see now the capsule's separating, the booster's slowing down. Okay, they're both slowing down actually. Okay, but the booster's now not under power. And so this is all about the reusable piece. Now the booster is going to start falling back to Earth. Okay, now falling is the wrong term for what we do. We're flying the booster back to Earth. But right now it's on a ballistic trajectory. Okay? And the only thing that's controlling it right now is the control surfaces on the rocket. And you see they get farther and farther apart just because of their different masses. So the reason we have fins on the back and the reason we have that blunt end on the front, it's actually what's called a ring fin. Okay? It's an aerodynamic surface that's actually a circle. Okay? I'm not an engineer, but I can make this stuff up and talk about it. Truthfully, I've learned enough over time. But what happens is, if you think about it, what a torpedo does in the water, has this control surface on the back that's basically a ring, keeps it stable. That's what the front end of this is. So now, as you see, okay, New Shepard booster is coming back to Earth. This is real time, okay? It's losing altitude very, very fast, okay? We're going quick. And if you look at the speed of the booster, it's slowing down, but it's still going 1,000 miles an hour, literally. And the reason this is fun to watch is, basically this is our technology. This is why we do what we do and how we're trying to get there. So this is all about reusability. Being able to reuse this asset, there's a reason you throw rockets away over the ocean when you do a lot of launches, because this is really freaking hard. That's a technical engineering term, by the way, I've learned. Okay, 8,000 feet. Haven't we gone from 60,000 feet to 8,000 feet awfully quickly? Engine ignites or reignites. Look how quickly that stops. Okay, and now, this is where I talk about the throttleability of the engine. You can't do this unless you've got a broad range in which you can throttle that engine, adjust to the mass of the rocket, and set down gently so you can launch again without a lot of work to do on the vehicle.
Touchdown. Welcome home, New Shepard. Wow, absolutely spectacular flight. That is the 4th mission to space.
So the cool thing about what Blue Origin has done with this vehicle is we did this 5 times in a row, which no one had ever done before. So we took the same booster, okay, the same unit, did this 5 times, okay? And if you all know about SpaceX, they're doing something very similar with orbital launches, and they've done exactly the same kind of thing in really cool ways. And then we've gotten other boosters now that we've done 6 times, okay? So this is fun stuff in my book. All right, now I talked about SpaceX. So SpaceX does the same thing with orbital launches.
These invisible hearing aids could change your life. If you're suffering from premature hearing loss, trouble hearing, don't skip this video. Technological advances. Hearing aids are not.
Sorry. All right. So SpaceX puts really good cameras on its boosters as it's coming back. So it's heading back for a launch site at the Cape. Now, that roll is not what it's supposed to be doing. Okay? And as you can see, doesn't that look kind of problematic? It is, okay? This is now the vehicle hurtling at 1,000 miles an hour, straight back to the launch site. But, okay, you'll watch what happens. So it is basically circling, it lost control. One of its control surfaces broke and basically it started spinning, okay, which they could then not control. I give SpaceX a lot of credit because they have built their systems in such a robust way that even as it was spinning, the rocket did what it was supposed to do. Because there's a command in the vehicle that says, if you cannot execute the landing safely, go out in the middle of the water and crash, okay? So that is what it did, but it still went through its entire landing cycle, okay? That's the rocket falling over once it landed straight up and down in the water. So even with that, it kept its mission and did exactly what it was supposed to do in the event of a failure. All right, now, the last one I'll show you is one of my favorites, personally. Okay, Proton. Remember, I worked for International Launch Services. Protons were what we sold, okay? We sold these to commercial customers. We charged them a lot of money. All right, now, this video is basically moving at half speed. This happened in 2013. This video is moving at half speed, okay? So every second that goes by is basically 2 seconds. We did it so you can actually show what happens, okay? Now, as you look, we're starting to go a little back and forth. Okay, a little back and forth on a rocket is not a good thing. Okay, so Proton is something that in recent years has had a lot of production quality problems, and this is one of them. Okay, going at that angle and then back the other way, also not a good thing for a rocket. It is not what it's supposed to be doing. Okay, now, turning all the way over and starting to head back toward the ground shortly after launch, also really not a good thing. And as I mentioned, you've got a lot of fuel on board rockets like this. Loses structural integrity in the next couple of seconds. I didn't realize there was a soundtrack to this. That's new to me. And the whole thing breaks apart, and there's a gigantic fireball.
They have revolutionized rocket engineering and space travel. From launching a sports car into orbit.
Go away. Yeah. So that's a bad day in rocket launch. So I'll sort of wrap this up with which I thought was a fun story. So as I said, Proton is produced by Khrunichev, okay? And I'll tell you, I worked with the Russians for 6 years. Their engineers are fantastic, okay? They really know what they're doing, and they have just as much spaceflight experience as, engineers from America or any other major country, and they are really, really brilliant. But the problem they had was they had production problems in terms of quality control, okay? So they had failure after failure, and each failure is a different thing. If you have different failures in different modes of your vehicle, you know you've got issues either in design or in production that you are not solving, okay? And nobody wants to fly on you if that happens. So that particular launch, what they determined is, within the rocket there's an avionics system, okay? It controls how the rocket flies, okay? And in the Proton, they have a sensor, okay? Sensor is designed to, as part of the avionics system, it's designed to do one thing, okay? That sensor is designed to say, we're going up, or we're not going up, okay? It's an inertial management sensor. So on the base of the rocket, you have two for redundancy, okay? And both of them send a signal that says, we are going the right way, go, okay? Someone, what they determined, took one of those sensors and installed it upside down. So imagine if you got one sensor on one side going, yep, we're good, it's all cool, and the other sensor's going, we're going straight down, please stop, okay? That's a problem, because what happened is exactly what you saw with that vehicle, because it was basically fighting itself, dealing with the two sensor readings that were completely 180 degrees opposed to one another. So, as a non-engineer, I have a lot of fun in this space. I have a lot of fun in the space market, and it's good stuff. I am happy to stay and talk to any questions that anyone has. I know we were talking about going to lunch with anybody who wanted to, and I'm happy to do that as well. You're welcome to look me up and ask me questions also, and it's been a real pleasure. Thanks.
All right, so now that we know how to burn through $300 million in a few minutes, if you're interested,
pretty easy in this industry.
If you're interested in more information, just connecting and going to lunch, and if you have time, see us up on the front.